Languages. Every time we talk about a country, three things come to mind, at least for me. Where that country is located, what their flag is, and what language they speak. There are a ton of other characteristics that define a country, obviously, but these three seem specifically important to identify it and its culture. There are over 6,500 languages in the world. Most of them are connected to each other in some form. We have those cool family tree type charts where we can see this. And if you want, I can make a full video about it. But usually we associate a single language with each country. In France, they speak French, in Germany, German, in Japan, Japanese. In this really cool map from Budget Direct, we can see the most spoken language in each country, which is the language we usually associate with the majority of countries. We have the interesting cases of countries sharing languages, like Portuguese, which is spoken in Portugal, Brazil, Angola, among other places, Spanish in Spain and almost all of Central and Southern America, or English in the United Kingdom, Australia, the United States of America, or Canada. But Canada is a great example that we can pick up for the point of this video, because besides English being the most spoken language, there is another, French. Canada has two official languages, and it's not the only country in the world to be like this. In fact, a really big number of countries in the world have more than one official language, from what I could find, and please correct me in the comments if I'm mistaken, because there were a lot of different sources with different numbers about this. There are 57 sovereign countries in the world with more than one official language. 41 have two languages, 11 have three, 4 have four, 1, South Africa has 11, and another, Bolivia, has 36. India's case was the most difficult to find a concrete answer to. Most places say they only have two official languages, Hindi and English. Others state no official language, and others say all 22 local languages are seen as recognized by the constitution. If you're from India and know the answer to this, please leave a comment telling me. Keep in mind, I'm referring to official languages. This differs from locally used and recognized languages. For instance, Indonesia also has over 700 languages, but only Indonesian is official, and Papua New Guinea has 851 indigenous languages, the most in the world, but only 4 are official. In some cases, and perhaps India is one of those, a few of these languages are recognized, like Portugal with Mirandese, a local language that is sparsely spoken in a small area of northeastern Portugal, recognized as such but not being taken as official and used in state documents, etc. In this video, we're going to focus on the official multilingual countries. So why? Why do some countries have more than one official language? In the case of most countries, it's because either at their origin or at their current time, they wanted/needed to include different and large groups that made up their territory's population. These groups might only diverge in language, but usually that language difference also represents a different culture, and including their languages as part of the official list contributes to their integration into the country and the sense of belonging to that same nation. Essentially, when there is a large minority that speaks another language and would be disenfranchised if that language were just ignored. In other cases, it could come from colonialism, imperialism, foreign occupation, areas in which those countries now exist, which were under the control and administration of foreign powers, and so those powers' languages stuck around even after local independence. The usage of Portuguese, Spanish, English, and French in South America and Africa especially are examples of that. And for either of those two reasons, or perhaps others like economic interest, some countries have more than one official language. So in order to better understand why this happens, how it works, and what some consequences of it might be, let's take a brief look at a few specific cases throughout the world where this happens. Canada, like we saw, has two official languages, English spoken by 75% of the population and French spoken by 22%. In these three maps, we can see which territories speak more of the two, with French being heavily concentrated in the area of Quebec. The reason why is colonization. Canada's two colonizing peoples are the French and the British. Initially, the British controlled parts of what is now Newfoundland, while French colonized recognize modern-day Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Quebec. Eventually, through war, the English acquired all of French Canada, and it became their colony alone before reaching independence. However, the change in rulers did not change the population that was already there since the French arrived, and because of that, the local usage of the language continued until today, in such a big dimension, population-wise, that it is seen as a second official language of the country, with all state documents and communications being made into two. In Afghanistan, Pashto and Dari are both official languages and the two most widely spoken. 78% speaks the first and 50% the latter, so necessarily many people speak both. Dari is the official name of the variety of Persian language spoken in Afghanistan, officially recognized and promoted since 1964 by the Afghan government. Dari has been the preferred language of government for centuries, despite the domination of politics by Pashtuns, for whom Pashto is their native language, and who seem to be the dominant native group of the region throughout history. Pashto is categorized as an Eastern Iranian language, and some say it is often neglected in the education system, which would adversely impact the economic advancement of Pashtuns as students because they wouldn't have the ability to fully comprehend what is being taught in another language. Within each of them, especially Pashto, there are a number of local dialects that vary between them. The Turkish language is spoken by around 4% of the population, and they are also a third official language, but only locally where they have majority of speakers. East Timor speaks a lot of languages. In this map we can see it clearly. They speak 5 Papuan languages and around 20 Austronesian ones, in addition to Portuguese, Indonesian, and English. The Papuan and Austronesian ones have to do with the native people. Those are their languages and dialects. Portuguese is because the region was a Portuguese colony, Indonesian because of the proximity to Indonesia and economic ties, also because of the previous occupation that they had, and English just because of the international usage of it, I guess. Timor's 2002 constitution states that Portuguese and Tetum are East Timor's 2 official languages, also defining English and Indonesian as working languages within civil service side by side with official languages as long as deemed necessary. Tetum is the most spoken out of all native languages, accounting for between 36 to 42% of the population. Under Portuguese rule, all education was in Portuguese, although it coexisted with Tetum and other languages. Portuguese particularly influenced the dialect of Tetum spoken in the capital of Dili, which is now the version more widely used and taught in schools. Under Indonesian occupation from 1976 to 99, East Timor's official language was Indonesian, so that partly stuck around too. A good example of why some countries have more than one official language, in this case that of the natives and old colonial rulers. Kenya is also a good example of the language of the colonizers still being used, along with that of the natives, English and Swahili, although Swahili is the main language. And Cameroon is an even bigger example, with several recognized national languages, but with the only 2 official ones being French and English, a heritage of Cameroon's colonial past as a colony of both France and the United Kingdom. 8 out of the 10 regions of Cameroon are primarily francophone, representing 83% of the country's population, and 2 are anglophone, representing 17%. Although the English-speaking population continues to become smaller year after year, with French becoming the main language. The nation strives towards bilingualism, but in reality very few Cameroonians are literate in both French and English, and 28% are literate in neither, speaking one of the native languages, which range between 250 and 600 different dialects. Wrapping up the examples for officially bilingual countries, Morocco, which speaks Arabic and Tamazight. 91% speak Moroccan Arabic, while 26% speak a dialect of the Amazigh language. French was spoken during colonial times and is still seen as a main language of the country, despite not being officially recognized as such. It retains a major place in Morocco. It's taught universally and serves as the country's primary language of commerce, economics, culture, science, and medicine, also being widely used in education and government. And Morocco is a member of the Francophonie, the association of countries with French as their lingua franca. Portuguese-speaking countries have a similar organization, the CPLP, which gathers countries with Portuguese as their official language. Moving on to a few trilingual countries. Belgium is an example, with 3 official languages, Dutch, French, and German. Dutch is mostly spoken in Flanders, French mostly spoken in Wallonia, and German in the small provinces bordering Germany. Even though the Belgian constitution does not explicitly mention which languages have official status, Article 4 divides the country into linguistic areas, which form the basis of the federal structure. Belgium has 4 linguistic areas: the French-speaking area, the Dutch-speaking area, the bilingual area of Brussels capital, and the German-speaking area. Bolivia is another example, with 3 main languages: Aymara, Quechua, and Spanish. Aymara and Quechua due to the native population and the fact these two are mostly among many other smaller dialects, their native languages, while Spanish was the language of the colonizers, an impact that lasted until today. However, despite these 3 being the main ones, the Bolivian constitution actually makes no difference between them and all the native ones, which are 36. This technically makes the plurinational state of Bolivia the country in the world with the most official languages. But when I saw this, I thought, okay, in practice they're not official as they're not all in official documents, something that would be completely impractical. However, they offer a solution which proves me wrong. In point 2 of Article 5 of their constitution, it states, the plurinational government and the departmental governments must use at least 2 official languages. One of them must be Spanish and the other shall be determined taking into account the use, convenience, circumstances, necessities, and preferences of the population as a whole or the territory in question. So, always Spanish and at least one of the native languages. Bosnia defines Bosnian, Croatian, and Serbian as their official languages. Bosnian is the language of the Bosnian natives, of course, and the other 2 are used due to the fact that many people live there who are Croatian or Serbian, given the proximity of these 2 countries and the fact that at many points in history they have been united under the same rulers. And here we can see a negative consequence of this multilingual choice. According to some, the official recognition of the 3 distinct languages led to a costly triumvirate system of public administration, public broadcasting, and education. Everything has to be done in the 3 languages, and this makes everything more expensive. I'm not sure if in practice this is the case. If there are any people from Bosnia watching, please feel free to clarify this in the comments. But for instance, some MPs apparently complain if they don't receive all documents written entirely in their own language, according to local media reports. Bosnia has an additional issue of essentially being separated in 2 between Bosnia-Herzegovina and the Republika Srpska. Both have the 3 languages as official, but the first prioritizes Bosnian while the other prioritizes Serbian. Equatorial Guinea is an odd example of making languages official, apparently simply so they can join the international language communities. They have Spanish, Portuguese, and French as the official ones, but many say they only added Portuguese to join the CPLP and French to join Francophonie, and have the economic advantages of dealing more closely with those groups of countries, with the 2 languages not actually being spoken throughout the country. Spanish, however, is the language of the colonizers and has been an official language since 1844. It's still the language of education, administration. 67% of the country speaks it, especially those living in the capital. Luxembourg is similar to Belgium, but has French, German, and Luxembourgish as its 3 official languages. Upon the founding of the country, French enjoyed the greatest prestige and therefore gained preferential use as the official and administrative language. German was used in the political field to comment on the laws in order to make them comprehensible to everyone. At the primary school level, teaching was limited to German, while French was taught in secondary education. A law of 1843 reinforced bilingualism by introducing the teaching of French in primary school. Luxembourgish is similar to Dutch and German and was introduced in 1912. From my perhaps wrong understanding, it's essentially German as a local dialect of Luxembourg, which uses, for instance, many loanwords from French. In this case, the multilingual choice stems from the historic location of the country between France and Germany, and counting with populations of both of these regions. New Zealand officially speaks English, Maori, and New Zealand Sign Language. English is due to colonialism and is the de facto main language of the country, spoken by almost everyone. The language of the indigenous Maori people was made the first de jure official language in 1987. All state signs and documents apparently use both languages. It can, for example, be used in legal settings such as in court, but proceedings are recorded in English unless requested. New Zealand Sign Language has been an official language since 2006. And regarding the use of sign languages, on the list I used only New Zealand and Papua New Guinea were counted as having their sign language being official, but according to worldatlas.com, 41 countries worldwide now recognize a type of sign language as being official, an important additional reason to add another official language. Papua New Guinea is the most linguistically diverse country in the world with over 839 9 live languages. And they make sure to point out that these aren't just dialects or variants of bigger groups, stating that they're literally individual languages. But while these 839 are recognized, only 4 have official status: Tok Pisin, English, Irimotu, and Papua New Guinea Sign Language. Tok Pisin is an English-based Creole. It's the most widely spoken, serving as the country's lingua franca. It also derives some vocabulary from German as a result of previous German colonial occupation. English is spoken due to colonialism and the international importance of the language, while Irimotu is one of the native languages as well, spoken by around 4.7% of the population. And Papua New Guinea Sign Language became the 4th officially recognized language in May of 2015. Singapore has 4 official languages: English, Chinese, Malay, and Tamil. English is the de facto main language, while Malay is the de jure main language. English became the lingua franca due to British rule of Singapore. The 3 others were chosen to correspond with the major ethnic groups present in Singapore at the time. Mandarin had gained status since the introduction of Chinese schools. Malay was deemed the most obvious choice for the Malay community, and Tamil for the largest Indian ethnic group in Singapore, in addition to being the language with the longest history of education in Malaysia and Singapore. Almost all Singaporeans are bilingual, since Singapore's bilingual education policy promotes a dual language learning system, a good consequence that can perhaps take place in countries that choose to have more than one official language, perhaps offering an advantage to its people when compared to neighboring countries that only teach their own native language at school. Switzerland speaks 4 languages, but really only 3 and mostly 2: German, French, Italian, and Romansh. But German and French are the most spoken, with only a small number speaking Italian and almost none speaking Romansh. German, French, and Italian maintain equal status as official languages at the national level, while Romansh is used in dealing with people that speak it. The Swiss came up with a good solution to avoid a problem we saw the Bosnians have of having to translate everything into 3. Latin is used on the coins of the Swiss franc and Swiss stamps, writing the country name as Helvetia. The reason why these languages are spoken has to do with the official languages of the cantons that make up the Swiss Confederation, each with more proximity to Germany, France, or Italy. Other than Bolivia and perhaps India, the country with the most official languages is South Africa. At least 35 languages indigenous to the region are spoken in the country, 10 of which are official. The 11th language is English, which is the primary language used in parliamentary and state discourse. The most common language spoken as a first language by South Africans is Zulu, followed by Xhosa and Afrikaans. English is the 4th most common language, but is understood in most urban areas as the dominant one in government and the media. The reasoning here seems simple. The 35 languages are those of the people historically native to the region, with the 10 most spoken being official, while English was the language of the European colonizers sticking around due to the established government institutions. So that's why some countries use more than one language. Which countries those are, how some have 2 official languages, others 3, others 4, and with a couple of them having even more. Not to mention the hundreds of other local languages, language variants, or local dialects that are spoken, and even sometimes recognized as indigenous or local languages, even if they are not official. And taking a look at a few key examples throughout the world that allow us to better understand why countries are sometimes bilingual, multilingual, and what that means and how it impacts the functioning of said nations. Thanks so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comments if you noticed any mistakes or if you have any additional information about this, like other interesting cases of multilingual countries that I didn't mention. Subscribe if you want, and I will see you next time for more general knowledge.